Thank you. I'm going to go get my next witness.
All right, go ahead and come up here in front of my clerk.
Hello. Can you please state and spell your first and last name?
My name is Marianne Robb, M-A-R-I-A-N-N-E-R-R-O-B-B.
Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Around the clerk of the ring. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Marianne Robb. I am a retired police officer with the town of Gilbert, Arizona.
When did you retire?
Retired July 9th, 2021.
How long did you work for the Gilbert Police Department?
I was with Gilbert 26 years and a law enforcement officer in Arizona for 34 years.
Where did you work prior to Gilbert?
Started with Mesa Police Department back in 1988, and then I was Pine Top Lakeside Police Department for 6.5 years, and started with Gilbert PD in 1995.
Okay. What were your duties at the Gilbert Police Department?
Pretty much patrol. Most of my career was patrol. I was also a crime prevention officer for approximately a year and a half. I was also an arson detective and a property crimes detective for approximately 3 years.
Were you on duty on October 2nd of 2019 around 9:15 in the morning?
Yes, I was.
At that time, did you respond to a 911 call of a shooting at 3875 East Phelps Street in Gilbert, Maricopa County, Arizona?
Yes, I was.
Can you describe for us what you saw when you arrived at 3875 East Phelps Street?
There was a gentleman standing pretty much in the street just in front of his home. There was also a dark-colored Tesla vehicle that was parked there, and I noticed that just to the driver's door on the ground was a window that was laying on the ground.
Was the Tesla in the road or in the driveway when you arrived?
It was in the driveway.
Okay. When you first arrived there, did you speak with this individual you saw on the road?
Yes, I did.
Who was that?
He identified himself as Brandon Boudreaux.
Okay. After speaking with Brandon Boudreaux for a while, did you go look at the Tesla?
Yes, I did.
Now, prior to looking at the Tesla, did you have a lot of information about the type of gun or the shooting or anything like that?
Just what dispatch gave us while en route to the call. Don't know, did not have what type, an actual specific type of weapon, but we knew it was some type of weapon, possibly a rifle. And that's pretty much all we had.
Okay. Were you solo when you arrived? Was there any other officers with you initially?
Not initially, it was just myself.
Okay. When you went up to the Tesla, can you tell us what you saw and where?
The Tesla, the vehicle itself was all closed up. All the doors were shut. And I looked up onto the frame of the actual car. Just above would be where the headrest is, but it's on the outside where the frame is of the car. And I noticed that there was a hole in the top of the car, and it looked to me like it was a bullet hole.
Now, in your 34 years as a police officer, have you seen bullet holes in vehicles before?
Yes, I have.
As a law enforcement officer, we obviously know you carry a weapon. Do you also have your own guns and shoot, I guess, personally?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So when you saw this hole in the Tesla, and I'm going to put up Exhibit 26. I'll pull it out a little. Is this what you saw?
Yes, I did. Exactly.
So you told us when you saw this, you recognized it as a bullet hole.
Yes.
Had Mr. Boudreaux, when you first contacted him, said anything about a BB gun or something like that?
I made a comment about that. At first he thought maybe it could have been a BB gun because he noticed that his windshield or his driver's side window kind of shattered.
Did he indicate that anything had come in and hit him, like whether there was a hole through the window?
No.
So you go up to this hole, this bullet hole. Did you think that was made by a BB gun?
Definitely not. No.
Did Brandon come up with you to look at his vehicle?
He did after
Okay.
I initially looked at it.
And did he make any statement when he saw you looking at that hole?
He says he definitely wasn't a BB gun or pellet gun or paintball gun. Nothing like that.
Do you recall him saying that he hadn't seen that before you pointing it out?
Oh, that's correct. Yes.
So when he first came up and saw you looking at that, did he indicate, oh, wow, I didn't see that?
Yes, he did.
Did you initially utilize your flashlight to try to see if you could find an exit or the projectile in there?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to find an exit at that point?
No.
Did you, in fact, ask him to open up the rear door of the Tesla so you could look and see if there was any exit into the car?
Yes, I did.
Did you find an exit?
I did not.
Did you then use a pen to try to see if you could find an exit or a projectile in there?
I used my pen also to see if I could figure out the trajectory of where the bullet, so I can think of, okay, where can I possibly locate that bullet? So that's why I put my pen in there to try to figure out what was the way it was traveling in the car to see if I can find.
Once you realize that there's this bullet hole in the frame of the Tesla vehicle, did you go back to your vehicle to do anything?
Yes, I did.
What did you go back to your vehicle to do?
Well, I made a phone call to one of my officers that was also in the area looking for a suspect vehicle. And I explained to him that this is no BB gun. This is an actual bullet hole. And we do have a crime here. So I asked him if he would come over to my location to assist me in starting basically a crime scene.
Okay. Did you want him to look at that as well?
Oh, yes.
Help you to see if there was an exit or anything like that as well?
Correct.
Did you get a camera to try to take some photographs as well to document what you were seeing right then?
I took some photographs. I used my police. We have an iPhone, and I was using that, and I was taking pictures of the whole scene.
Okay. Now, when you were looking at this bullet hole, and then you came back, I guess prior to leaving, did you ask Brandon about that glass that was next to the vehicle?
I did. I thought maybe he took the glass out and put it on the ground, and he said no. What occurred was, as he pulled into his driveway after the incident occurred and he knew that the other vehicle was gone, he pulled into his driveway. Well, the Teslas, I guess as soon as he puts his car into park, his driver's door automatically opens. And that's when he said that, as you can see on what would be, I guess, the right-hand side is when, yes, the actual window, the driver's window just fell out onto the driveway there.
Did you actually ask him if he had moved it to make sure it was where it landed?
Yes, I made sure he didn't touch it, and I asked him that.
Okay, so did he indicate he had not touched it or moved it?
No, it was where it fell out of his car is where it laid.
Okay. When you first contacted Brandon initially in the street to the time when you showed him the bullet hole and came back, can you tell us his demeanor over that time span from when you first contacted him to after you made that call and came back and had contact with him?
He was kind of bewildered. He didn't know what exactly happened. He was very quiet and concerned and didn't know how to react on this because he had no idea what in the world happened. You know, this car, this something, the window falls out of the car when he opens the door, and he's like, he's just kind of bewildered on like what in the world took place just a few minutes ago.
When you came back after you had showed him the bullet hole, went and made the call and returned, did you see a change in his demeanor?
Yes, I did.
What did you note then?
Well, I noticed when I showed him the bullet hole and all, he's like, first of all, he said, well, that definitely isn't a BB gun. And I explained, no, it's not. He then says, I need to sit down, because I was asking him some more questions. He goes, I just need a minute. I just need to sit down. I asked him if he wanted a chair. He says, no, I just need a minute. So I just had him sit down right there in the driveway area and just let him gather himself for a few minutes.
Did you notice anything with his hands?
He was quite shaken.
So you saw his hands physically shaking?
Yes.
At some point, did you ask Brandon to give you a description of the vehicle that he said shot at him?
Yes, I did.
What did he give you in terms of a description?
The description was a green, a kind of a darkish green Jeep Wrangler. And he said that as he was driving westbound on his street, Phelps, the back window of this Jeep just kind of flew open, and he noticed that there was a muzzle of some type of weapon that was pointing out at his vehicle. He thought maybe there was a silencer, but there was a very loud bang from that. After that happened, his window shattered, and he just got scared, so he just took off and went around the block, went westbound and around the block. Where this all took place is he said that this green Jeep Wrangler was parked westbound, and if we can see that, it was that would be kind of the south side. It was parked on his side of the street, and it was pretty much face to face with that white minivan. So it was basically parked the wrong way on the roadway. And that's where it was parked there. It was pretty much, he said it was right up against the minivan. And that's when he saw the back window pop open. And that's when that gun pointed at him. And he heard a very loud bang, saw his window shatter. And then like I said, he just kept going westbound to the next street over, made a turn northbound on that street, and basically stopped. Because he just called 911 and got 911 on, they were talking 911.
Let me ask you a little bit about, did he tell you this Jeep Wrangler, if it was a 2 or 4 door?
It was a 2-door.
Did he tell you anything about the license plate on the vehicle?
Yes, the license plate he didn't have the numbers, but it definitely was a Texas license plate.
When he talked about the type of gun that came out, did he tell you if he thought it was a handgun or a rifle?
It had a long barrel, so he said he was believing it was a rifle.
Okay. So he talked to you about the Jeep being right in this area in front of this white vehicle we see in Exhibit 14?
Yes, that is correct.
Did he also sort of present to you approximately where he was when he sees this window open and the rifle barrel appear?
If you see the cones right here, I believe detectives must have put them on right where that first cone exactly. That's where he started making that left he started going into his driveway. And that is when the shot occurred.
Okay. And then he continued straight?
He did. He just kept going straight because he had no idea what was happening. So he just got out of the area and headed west on Phelps.
Now, Detective, you told us obviously you've been a law enforcement retired officer for more than 30 years. Have you fired a rifle?
Yes, numerous times. I'm an avid hunter.
When you fire a single shot from a rifle, will a casing always eject?
No, it depends on what rifle you're shooting. If you have a bolt action rifle, if you shoot, it's good. You need to manually open up the bolt. The projector, the casing will go out, will eject, and then you would put another bolt, or you'd close the bolt and put another round in your gun. If it's a semi-automatic rifle, then yes, as soon as you shoot, the casing will pop out and another bullet will go into the chamber.
Okay. Based upon what Brandon had told you, that he only saw the end of the barrel come out the back window, did you expect to find a casing around here?
No, not at all.
Why not?
Well, it's a Jeep, and I also have a Jeep Wrangler myself, but if the barrel is just kind of right out by the end of the Jeep where the window goes up, the rest of the rifle's inside the Jeep. So wherever that person is, whether it's in the driver's seat, well, if it's two doors, it's got to be the driver's seat, passenger seat area. As soon as the rifle is fired, the bullet comes out, it's going to be right inside the Jeep. It's not going to go out the back end because it's a long rifle. So the casing, if it was a semi-auto, it's going to have fallen right there somewhere, the driver's seat or maybe in between the passenger seat in that area.
Did you in fact tell the other officers and sergeants that arrived at the scene that you didn't expect to find a casing because of that reason?
That is correct, yes.
You told us that you have a Jeep Wrangler yourself.
Yes.
In order to open that back window, do you have to remove the rear tire if you want to just open the window? And
yes, I mean, even if you didn't have a rear tire, you got to open up the tailgate. The tailgate comes first, then the window would pop up.
Okay. So if there's a tire on it and you want to open just the window, it would hit the tire.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. After, I guess, as you are collecting this information, did you call to have detectives come to arrive at the scene?
Yes, I went back in my patrol car, contacted my sergeant, advised him what I had, and the detectives were dispatched out to the scene.
Now, while you were sort of the person who was having contact with Brandon, and you're observing him having to sit down and shaking, did you talk to him about whether or not he needed someone to come be there with him?
Yes, I asked him if he needed a bottle of water. I asked him if there was maybe a family member or a friend that could be with him during this investigation.
And did, at some point during the time you were here, did a couple of his friends show up?
Yes, they did.
Okay. As this investigation was going on, once you realized this was really a bullet hole, we see some yellow tape here. What is that?
That is crime scene tape. At the time, we knew that we now have a crime scene. So what we'll do is put the tape in the area that we feel that is part of the actual crime scene. So no other, whether they're officers, the public, or anybody cannot come into that area. And it's an area that detectives and officers can search without it being contaminated by people coming in, going in that area.
In fact, did one of Brandon's friends sort of arrive while he was initially here, and he was kind of asked to move back away from the scene some?
That is correct, yes.
And so we can see here the yellow tape is sort of behind where you have explained the Jeep was located according to Brandon?
Yes.
Now, did you have a couple different contacts with Brandon as you were gathering information and sort of going back to your car and making some calls?
Yes, I had contact with him in front of his home, and also when we had him and his friends go across the street and sit on the grass in the neighbor's house.
Before he went across the street to sit, did you try to, or did you talk to Brandon about who he thought might have been responsible for this?
Yeah, I asked him if he had any enemies that would be doing this.
And so because of the way that he talked to you about this, where Jeep is parked there and he arrives and the door comes open and a barrel of a rifle comes out, were you trying to determine who might be the person doing that?
That is correct, yes.
Did Brandon tell you that the only thing he could think of was his soon-to-be ex-wife's family?
Yes, he did.
Did he tell you that he thought this might be in relation to an incident that occurred in Chandler?
Yes, he did.
Did he provide you the names of people who were involved in that incident that he thought might be involved in his shooting?
Yes, he did. He said Lori Vallow and Alex Cox.
During your conversation later with Brandon, did he provide you information that Lori Vallow and her husband at the time, Charles Vallow, had previously lived in Texas?
Yes, she did.
Was that significant to you given the fact he told you the Jeep had Texas plates?
Exactly. If these folks are from Texas, Texas plates, it's a good possibility 2 and 2 together that possibly could be the suspect.
Was that all things that you were passing along to the sergeants for them to brief to the detectives?
That is correct, yes.
Did you talk to Brandon about when he had moved into this residence, how long he'd been here?
Yes, I did.
And did he advise you that well, let me ask you, this was October 2nd was a Wednesday, right?
Yeah,
Did he tell you he had just moved in the prior Wednesday?
that is correct. He's moving in Wednesday, Thursday area, yes, of the week before.
So the Wednesday and Thursday he had been physically moving into this house.
That is correct, yes.
Did you go through Brandon's morning routine on that day, October 2nd?
Yes, I did.
And did he talk to you about his timeline of leaving at 7:25 to take his kids to school?
Yes.
Did he tell you about dropping off his youngest with his soon-to-be ex-wife?
Yes, he did.
Now, and did you again relay all of that to the sergeants to be briefed to the detectives?
That is correct, yes.
Were you taking notes of that as you were speaking with him?
Yes, from the minute I started until I left the scene, I was taking notes.
Were you also wearing a body cam?
Yes, I was.
So was that also recording that?
Yes.
You told us that at some point Brandon and his friends moved across the street to sort of get out of the scene.
Yes, that's correct.
And were they sort of sitting under a tree in some shade?
Yes.
Did you at some point talk to the neighbor whose, I guess, yard y'all were sitting in?
Yes, I did.
Did you look for and ask for any cameras at her house?
Yes.
Did you find any?
No, there were no cameras.
And did you just remain with Brandon Boudreaux and his friends until detectives came to meet and interview with him?
Yes, I did.
State has no other questions.
Cross.
Officer Robb, is it okay if I call you that since you're
That is
retired?
fine.
Okay. Officer Robb, When you had stated that you saw a gentleman standing in the street, is that correct?
That is correct.
How far in the street was Brandon when you pulled up?
From the sidewalk,
Yeah.
maybe 2, 3 feet, maybe.
Okay. So closer to the driveway side?
I would assume so, yes. I'd say maybe a couple feet east of the driveway and about maybe 2 or 3 feet into the street.
Okay. And then where did you park when you drove up?
Across the street.
And then did you talk to Brandon in the street? Did you guys go into the driveway? What happened at that point?
I started talking to him because he was still on the phone. He was in the street, and I had him walk onto the sidewalk, which was a lot safer than being in the street, and tell me what was happening.
Okay, so you said he was on the phone when you came up?
Yes.
So he ended that call and then moved, or he was on the phone still when he moved to the driveway?
Now, when I arrived, I believe he was talking to our 911 dispatch. When I arrived and told him what was happening, he hung up with the dispatch.
Okay. And then how long did you talk before you went over to look at the Tesla?
I could give you maybe 4 or 5 minutes or so.
Okay. And then when you looked at the Tesla and you put your pen in the Tesla and kind of wiggled it around, were you looking for the projectile in there?
I was looking for the projectile, and I was also looking for the trajectory of how that bullet went in so I could figure out where in the vehicle it might, if it did exit, where it could have exited.
Like to see if the hole went through possibly into the car?
No, I'm just looking to see which way the bullet was going in the car, so if we can find it, where in the vehicle it could have been.
Okay. So did you, is that kind of a typical thing that you stick your pin in there to find trajectory?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you didn't think that could do anything to dislodge any of the projectiles or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
And did you find any large projectiles within that hole?
I did not.
And you didn't find any of the projectiles, is that correct? You didn't extract them out of there?
That's correct.
Figure out the trajectory with your pen?
I could see which way it went into the vehicle.
And which way was that?
I believe it went up. I don't have the picture in front of me, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to try to explain. But where the driver would have been and his head would have been right here, the projectile or the bullet hole was approximately maybe 1.5 to 2 inches above where Brandon's head would have been in the driver's seat. And it went up, and it would have been kind of an upward motion into the frame of the car.
An upward motion.
Kind of going up like this.
Okay. And how big was that actual hole that you viewed with your eyes?
I did not measure it, but it was definitely a rifle round.
Okay. So in your experience with rifles, how big would the rifle bullet be to have to make that size of a hole? Like a typical rifle bullet or something bigger? I don't know much about bullets.
If you want me to guess, I would say maybe a 30-06.
Okay. And so did you give these trajectory points to when you were briefing the detectives when they got there, what you thought the trajectory was?
I did not, because they could easily see what was where the trajectory was. I let them make their determination.
And then did you look for, I know that you had asked him, you said you had asked him to open up the back seat, is that correct? The back door
Yes.
to the back seat? And what did you find inside the back seat? Anything?
No.
How about glass?
Which glass? In the back seat or in the back of the back door, you mean?
Yeah.
No, it was fully intact.
Well, I mean, just, was there any glass in the back seat of the car?
No,
So was there glass in the front seat of the car?
I don't recall that. I don't remember.
And there was some glass on the flooring?
There was glass on the outside. I couldn't tell you if there was anything inside the vehicle. I don't recall that.
Okay. And Brandon had told you, or had conveyed to you, that the window had fallen out when the door opened. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And it had not been moved at all?
It has not.
And did you move it at all?
I did not.
Did you see any of the detectives move it?
I did not.
Was it basically intact and just shattered to your view?
It looked like it. I didn't see a bunch of little pieces. It looked like it was what would be a a tint, and how it shatters and it just stays in one big piece, and it's just on the ground right up there in the driveway.
Okay. And in that glass, did you see a bullet hole at all?
I didn't touch the glass.
Just looking, did you see a hole where like the bullet had gone through the glass?
No, I did not.
And you never found any kind of part of the projectile or saw an exit for the projectile anywhere in the vehicle?
That is correct.
So it looked like it stopped inside the frame. Is that what you were assessing?
Possibility, yes.
Okay. And you had said before that Brandon had thought it might be a BB gun. He'd indicated that to you?
He did.
And did he indicate to you about seeing the little boy outside?
Nothing like that, no.
Okay. Or that it was possibly a paintball gun?
They made a comment, yes.
And then you had stated that you put a flashlight in there to see if there was an exit. Is that correct?
I'll see if I saw anything inside a projectile or anything in that hole. I did.
And you didn't see any kind of exit hole with the flashlight?
That's correct.
Okay. You had stated that when Brandon's first friend showed up, that he was inside the crime scene tape. Is that correct?
Don't believe the crime scene tape was put up quite yet.
Okay. But he was walking right by the vehicle, by the Tesla. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And then are you aware that there was one piece of glass found in the street?
I could not tell you that. I don't know.
So if Brandon and his friends were walking around in that before the crime scene tape was put up, it could possibly have been kicked or moved by a shoe.
A possibility.
Yeah. Did Brandon go from where the Tesla was to back to the street and back and forth? Or,
I don't believe so. I think he pretty much stayed on that sidewalk.
okay.
I remember.
But initially he was standing in the street.
That is correct.
Did you think that was odd since someone just shot at him? That he would be standing out in the middle of the street where someone could come back around the bend?
Object to speculation.
Sustain.
You had stated that Brandon had conveyed to you that he had no idea what had happened. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so he was bewildered. Is that what word you used?
Yes.
And that he had described the vehicle that had shot at him as a darkish green Jeep Wrangler.
That is correct.
And so did he not say puke green to you?
I can't recall if he said puke green.
And then did he go and get his phone and show you a color of a green and said camo green?
That is correct.
Okay. So he actually showed you a picture of the green color.
He didn't show me. He was looking at his phone, and there was another officer, Officer Bullock, myself, we're looking at, and that's the color that he was looking at, and he said camel green.
Okay. So, but you saw the picture of the camo green that he was showing to Officer Bullock?
I don't believe so, no.
But you heard him say the word camo green?
That is correct.
Okay. And then you said something about that he saw a silencer but heard a loud bang.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. If there was a silencer, would there be a loud bang?
Couldn't tell you. I don't know if silencer on a rifle. I have no idea. I've never heard a silencer on a rifle, so I can't answer that.
In all your shooting experience, you've never used one or had known anything about them?
Not a silencer. I know a silencer on a handgun, but not on a rifle. So I don't know how loud or how quiet it would be.
Okay. And so if you're inside a car, like a nice car, right, like a Tesla, and all the windows are shut, the doors are shut, maybe you have the radio on, you might not even hear a loud bang. I mean, if there was a silencer, you might not even hear a loud bang at all. Wouldn't that be true?
Again, to speculation, since she's already indicated she doesn't know.
Hold on. She testified she hasn't experienced a silencer on a rifle, so the objection is sustained.
In your estimation of looking at the crime scene, because you were first on the scene, is that correct?
Yes.
That how far away would the back of the Jeep have been to where the shot occurred when Brandon was turning into the driveway, in your estimation?
I did not, and an estimate, maybe 10 feet.
Okay. So would it be hard, someone has shot rifles, right? Hard to hit your target at 10 feet away with a rifle?
No, I don't think so.
And you had stated that you didn't think that there would be a casing anywhere on the ground, but they did canvass for a casing anyway, isn't that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And were you part of the side-by-side walking down the road looking for any kind of projectile or casings that went around the block?
No.
Okay. Those 11 other officers?
I don't know how many. There were officers, but I couldn't tell you how many.
But you did not participate in that?
That is correct.
Okay. Were you gone by that point, or you were still there working the scene?
I don't know what time they started that, so I couldn't tell you that.
Did you see them doing that?
I did not in front of the house. No, I did not.
So you didn't witness any of those people walking the whole block to search for things?
That's correct. I did not.
Okay. So it could have been done after possibly you left the scene?
Yes?
Okay. About how long do you think that you were there at the scene?
I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at my notes. Got to be at least an hour, maybe two.
Okay. And what was your role after you spoke to Brandon, briefed the detectives, then what were you doing?
I just stood on the grassy area on the other side of the road where Brandon and his two friends were sitting on the grass.
And you had mentioned something about, did you talk to some neighbors? Is that correct?
There was a neighbor that came out of her door, and she was standing at her front entrance to her house.
And you spoke with her?
I did.
And did you come back and follow up with any of the neighbors?
Not just her, not with any other neighbors.
Did you go follow up with her?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you stated, so when you were speaking to Brandon initially, when did he call his friends to come over?
It was after I went back into my patrol car, came back out, maybe 10 minutes later or so. I assume he was on the phone and contacted him at that time.
Okay. And did you discuss that with him, like, go ahead and call your friends or call someone to come be with you?
No, I told him, do you need me to call someone for you to be with you?
Okay. And he decided to do that himself?
I assume so, yes.
Okay. You had stated something about that he was at the front of the house. So before he was under the tree, he was sitting at the front of the house? Is that correct?
When I initially arrived,
No, after you spoke to him for the first few minutes.
that is correct, yes.
Okay. And did you enter the house at all?
I did not.
Did you enter the garage at all?
No.
And in your notes, did you write a report?
I did.
Is the neighbor that you spoke to Samantha Daybell?
Can I look at my report to refresh my memory? Because I couldn't tell you right off.
Sure.
She has it. She has it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. She's just going to look at it, right?
Can you ask that question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, is the neighbor that you talked to's name Samantha Baybuck?
Raybuck, yes.
Oh, Raybuck. Okay, I must have that on. And did she convey to you,
Object to hearsay.
Sounds like that's where it was going. Sustained.
did you learn that someone in the neighborhood thought there was a dark blue
Object
Jeep?
again to hearsay.
Sustained.
Did she give you any relevant information that was used in your investigation?
She really didn't give me really any information on that. I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
Did you use any information that you received from Samantha Raybuck in your investigation?
I gave that information to the detective.
And would that be Detective Pillar?
I don't remember there was a lot of detectives. I don't remember exactly who I spoke with to give that information to.
Okay. And Detective Pillar is the case agent, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And so is that kind of who you report to, though? If there's anything going on, you kind of go to the case agent?
I would, yes.
And so have you spoken to Detective Pillar about this case since October 2nd, 2019?
No,
So he's never asked you any follow-up questions or anything about the case?
no.
So in your report, you wrote your report and just handed it over, and that was that?
It submitted it and that was it. Yes, correct.
Okay. And in your report, do you remember reporting that it was like pukey green?
I would have to get a recollection. I'm not sure about that.
So you're refreshing your memory by looking at your report?
Yes, sir. I do see green. I don't believe it's pukey green.
I thought that was funny. Okay, so no one that you spoke to, Officer Robb, other than Brandon, heard a loud bang. Is that correct?
I object to hearsay.
I'll sustain, you can rephrase that.
The only witness you have that heard a loud bang was Brandon. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Brandon also stated that he thought there was a silencer on the gun. Is that correct?
He did. He said there was something in the front that he believed was a silencer.
Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
All right. Redirect.
When you were talking to Brandon, he was talking about thinking it was maybe a BB gun. Was he indicating that he thought this because nothing came into his car, like there was no hole through his window into his vehicle?
That is correct.
When you are the first officer on scene, did it become clear to you when you went up to the Tesla that he had no idea there was a bullet hole in his vehicle?
That is correct, yes.
When you were talking about Brandon's demeanor, about him having sort of no idea what happened, you're not saying that he didn't know what occurred that day, that he wasn't able to tell you what he saw and what happened as he drove up, right?
That is correct.
Okay. So was Brandon able to tell you turned onto his street and saw this Jeep?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
Was Brandon able to tell you what happened when he turned onto his street and saw the Jeep there?
Yes, he did that.
He was able to tell you about seeing that back window come up.
Correct.
And he was able to tell you about seeing the rifle barrel come out.
Yes,
He was able to tell you about the rifle barrel having what he thought was a silencer at the end.
that is correct.
And then he was able to tell you that he heard that loud bang and his window shattered,
That is correct.
and that after that he went straight.
Yes, that's correct.
And he was able to give you the description of the Jeep Wrangler,
Yes,
2 doors,
yes,
that it had that Texas license plate on it,
that's correct.
the direction and location where it was parked.
Yes,
Did Brandon tell you that his car was still moving when the bullet struck his car?
I believe he did.
So the person from that back of the Jeep is firing as his vehicle is still moving.
That is correct.
When you were there, you were asked by the defendant about anyone or about Brandon or anyone going into the house or the garage. Was it your understanding that the other officers that were there cleared the house?
They were going to clear the house, yes.
You just didn't participate in that.
That's correct.
What does it mean to clear the house?
It's a possibility they were thinking there could be somebody in the house, so when they clear the house, they're actually searching room to room in the house to make sure there was no one else there.
Okay, so did Brandon give him permission to go into his house and do whatever they needed to do?
Yes, they did.
When you first drove up on the scene, you said Brandon was in the street on the phone with 911 still?
Yes,
Was he kind of looking as you came up and kind of going towards you?
I believe so.
And then as you walked up to him, did you sort of take him back onto the sidewalk?
Yes, I started explaining, what's going on, and then, yeah, I had him go up on the sidewalk myself.
To kind of just had him follow you up there?
Yes,
And then you said when you started talking with him, he then hung up with 911?
that is correct.
Okay. In terms of the distance between the Jeep and the Tesla, Was it just a little more than the width of the driveway, basically? I'm going to put up Exhibit 7 here. So if we are talking about the Jeep is here, right?
That is correct, yes.
And this is Brandon's driveway?
Yes.
So did he explain the end of the Jeep was right on the edge of his driveway?
Yes, it was.
And so the distance between the end of the Jeep and Brandon's car would be sort of where that, from the end of his driveway to where the cone was?
That's correct. I didn't do any measurements, but just assumption, just looking at it, I'd say maybe approximately 10 feet.
Okay. And then you were not responsible for searching the distance of where Brandon told you he had driven or where he had seen the vehicle, the Jeep, go?
That is correct.
At some point during this, when detectives were there, did you finally get relieved to go do other calls?
Yes, I went back on to my routine patrol. Yes.
All right. Thank you. I have no other questions for this witness.
Are there any questions for this witness from the jury? Write down your question if you have a question. Pass it forward.
I wrote it down.
Rifle, would it be easier or harder to hit a closer target?
Actually, B, if you have a sight, if you're using a scope, it's harder.
All right. Any follow-up based on that question first from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
From the state?
And would the movement of the object you're striking also play into the difficulty of hitting it?
It would be the moving of the vehicles. Also, it depends on whoever is doing the shooting with the rifle. Do they have a rest where they can shoot and everything? Meaning a rest, meaning you put your gun on a stable platform and you're able to shoot where there's when the recoil happens, the gun does not jump. If you're doing it freehand, then a lot of times the gun will kind of go up the recoil and your gun would kind of go in an upward direction.
So if a person is shooting a moving target using a gun that doesn't have a stable platform, the recoil of the rifle could also impact the ability to hit the target.
That is correct. If they're aiming here, a lot of times without the rest, it might just kind of go up just a hair and miss its actual target.
No other questions, Your Honor?
All right. You can step down. We're going to take our afternoon recess for about 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition.